the topic of dangling domain hijacking. Welcome, Mr. Alvin Kwan.
Right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alvin Kwan. I'm the head of strategic partnership and products in CSC. So, what I'm going to talk about today is questions about a particular attack. Yes. Before I do so, I want to talk to you about something I find rather important because you are attending APAC DNS. So, what's DNS has to do with cybersecurity? What's ICANN has to do with cybersecurity? That's a question that we have to answer. So before we understand the landscape about the internet, we can't understand some of the attack that we find from the internet. So what I'm going to do today is to talk about the internet and cybersecurity. I'm going to talk about how subdomain hijacking, or dangling DNS hijacking actually happens, how to mitigate that, and some of the highlight from, actually not from our report only, but from a report from Tsinghua University. So today I'm supposed to have a guest speaker from Tsinghua University, but unfortunately they are not able to come, but they pass on the information to me to present on their behalf. So let me give the credit to the Tsinghua University research team first. So to begin, we actually live under two systems at the moment. One, which I would call the network security system, where we are basically trying to prevent things from hijacking or penetrating into our network, our firewall, basically. So traditionally, we understand cybersecurity mainly from a network security perspective. Now, the other system is the inter-network system. So this is where ICANN lives. ICANN is dealing with inter-network, how systems connect to different systems. And increasingly in the cloud environment and modern security environment, we are going to see a lot more of these two merging together. So this is why I think we have to understand first, why are we going to talk about cybersecurity as together in a ICANN APAC DNS forum. So in a nutshell, network security, you're probably familiar with this term called zero trust. The primary concern on network side is about intrusion prevention. We are familiar with the model called OSI model. The stuff that we have to buy are over there. And the inter-network side are quite different. It doesn't use OSI model. It uses a model called TCP/IP model. It's a totally different concept. TCP/IP doesn't even like layering at all. They don't like layering. Most of the things doesn't work in layer. The primary concern is something called identity abuse. If you join the session from John Crane from ICANN, we talk about domain name as a digital identifier. So a lot of the problem that happens on the internet is actually an identity abuse problem. So the list of stuff that happens on the internet are like domain hijacking, Kaminsky attack, DNSSEC, stuff like that. All right, I won't bore you with it, but I think it's important for us to first establish these two frameworks because that's very important for our subsequent conversation. Now, this community, this event, is for us to bring together the internet community and the cybersecurity community, which doesn't always work well together or mingle really closely together. At least I don't see a lot of cybersecurity experts going to ICANN meeting and vice versa, right? So what we need to do is to understand how the two actually interlink together. So let me give you a couple of examples. So as a cybersecurity expert, do you want to know who is behind a cyber attack? All right, if I detect something, a malicious IP or malicious domain name, do we want to know who they are? I probably think the answer would be yeah, we definitely want to know who they are. Do you want a faster takedown of phishing site? Do you want the ability to block harmful domain name from even registered? Are you affected by the upcoming shortening of SSL to 90 days instead of 1 year? It's coming probably around September this year or next year. So these are things that is happening on the internet side, in the internet community. We are making policy related to this. So in terms of knowing who is behind the cyber attack, that has a lot to do with ICANN, who is reform, which define who get access to certain who is information. It also related to ICANN, who is accuracy policy, which define, if you disclose that who is ownership data, is it going to be a fake data that is basically useless for you? Phishing site takedown, I had a session yesterday talking about a particular concept called DNS abuse. In the industry, among the government policymaker, we all talk about phishing attack takedown using the term DNS abuse. The other thing is blocking harmful content from being registered. That's a concept under ICANN right protection mechanism policy. And there are commercially available mechanism for you to actually purchase something as long as you submit your trademark into the trademark clearinghouse, which is an ICANN mechanism, and then you can buy a block to block your brand from being registered by different registries. So I won't go through a lot of these in details, but I hope that this kind of establish why internet policy is relevant for cybersecurity. Now, what's connect the networks, the inter-network side? There are a couple of things like domain name, IP address, DNS, BGP protocol. Encryption is very important to protect the data itself. The topic of today's discussion is something called subdomain hijacking or dangling domain hijacking, which is something, in between domain name and DNS, somewhere over there. So what subdomain or dangling DNS hijacking is? Now I'm going to play you a video. That's a video actually not done by CSC. I deliberately don't want to use ours. I will show ours later on, but this is a pretty good case actually by Checkpoint. And the reason, and one of the things that is also related to ICANN is that because of this issue, ICANN actually issue a warning to the registrar community. This is the email that we received as a registrar. And ICANN is basically warning us, as registrar, we have to pay attention to this because, this has a pretty big impact on everyone's security stance. In that particular email, this is where I find the Tsinghua University research team, and I make a contact with them and invite them to present together with me. Unfortunately, they are not able to come, but you'll get the content and you'll get the research today. Now, the Checkpoint video, this is on YouTube, so it's public. I didn't steal it from them. So this basically explains how dangling DNS happens in real life by a company. So let me just play that. Now that's basically show a link being distributed via WhatsApp. And you can see that the link is ea.com and a subdomain. That's basically show that when they click on the link, the hijacker obtain the email and password and stole the account. Now, let me stop from here. Something that is very important for you to see is that phishing email used the exact domain name, ea.com, a subdomain of ea.com. So how do they actually do that? How can they actually hijack the real domain of a reputable company and send a phishing email using the real domain name? Now, let me tell you, if they are sending a phishing link like that, if I am a consumer, I will click on it because I can see ea.com. There's no way for me to distrust that link. And this is very important. This is the real threat of dangling DNS hijacking. Now, the video I just showed basically showcase a particular case how in real life, how dangling DNS hijacking actually happens, and you see the threat. Now, this video that I'm going to play is how it actually works, how to launch the attack, so to speak. So after that, I'll share a little bit of a research on how big this problem is.
Global businesses rely on the internet for everything. From emails, websites, authentication, and voice over IP. Throughout the year, businesses launch promotional websites, announcements, and applications. Before users can reach the destination website to access content, there's a process that must be followed. The website owner will engage with a web hosting provider to request a landing page for an upcoming promotion. Next, they will reach out to their DNS administrator or IT team to make that connection. Behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. In order for the site to display live content, they need to connect the dots, which is the DNS. When the campaign is over, the marketing team will realize that the website is no longer needed and will remove it by going to the website. The marketing team doesn't realize that they need to also go back to their DNS team to remove the DNS record. The DNS record that is used to map users to the destination is left behind, as Dangling DNS. Over time, these DNS records will accumulate and can be used against victims in an attack known as subdomain hijacking. Cybercriminals crawl the web asking, where does this point to? They can go to the web hosting provider and ask for a specific host name as long as it's not in use, no questions asked. Cybercriminals will use Dangling DNS records to display their own malicious content. They can easily set up their spoof website and attract genuine traffic for their fake content using a hostname no longer in use. Security protocols that detect bad actors and their activities are prevented by this method. Security teams can't detect a breach, and end users can't tell the difference. Cybercriminals can even get a free domain-validated digital certificate to add the HTTPS catalog to seem more authentic. With time and business growth, more of these daily DNS will accumulate, and teams will hesitate to delete DNS records they're unfamiliar with. It's a challenge for enterprise organizations to manage assets outside the firewall, where there are a variety of complex external attack surfaces. CSE has developed a subdomain monitoring solution that provides comprehensive analysis and daily alerts to any change in state, allowing you to quickly take action and remove the offending Dangling DNS record. Receive full reporting on all your DNS zone records daily, and finally, get some closure to the vulnerability that is very difficult to manage across departments. Secure your organization's continuity, reputation, and revenue with CSC subdomain monitoring.
All right, thank you. Hope that video already explained how it works. Basically, when you forgot to clean your DNS record, it becomes a dangling DNS, and all I need to do as a hacker is to find that there is a dangling DNS, and then I go to the provider that you used before, a cloud provider, a CDN provider, or whatnot. I buy a service, and then I say, all right, I point this service back to this subdomain. The two points will connect again, and they have control. So that's how the previous case happened. That's how they are able to launch a phishing attack using the real domain name. Now, the question that you probably would ask is, all right, I understand this. This is quite threatening in a way because it is using my brand. My domain name is, abusing the trust, identity abuse. But how big is this problem? If it's just really remote, the hacker community doesn't really know about this, that's not probably a big problem. So this is the answer. Just search for this answer. Let's refer to the Tsinghua University research led by Dr. Zhang Mingming. Very good research. So they did a very thorough research on this particular issue. And so to start off with, if you see any Tsinghua logo over there, that's basically their slide. And the content are from them. I have to change the colorings so that it seems more congruent. Now, There are cases like this, a lot of subdomain being taken over from a reputable company. There are the EAKs and things like that. It's rising as reported in the news. Now, and there is this particular trend. This is a research done by their team. So they compare the subdomain takeover incidents from 2020 to 2021. It's actually increased by 25%, and you can see a really alarming trend. It is probably going to continue in that direction as well, because a lot more people are having this particular problem. The DNS hosting environment become a lot more complicated. It's easier for people to forget about it. Now, this is also happening in real life. So this is a print screen from a site called HackerOne. So they do ethical hacking and stuff like that. And if you basically just type subdomain hijacking onto the search function, and you'll see lots of cases of subdomain takeover happen. And when you see this word, it basically means the problem that I just told you about. That exactly what happened to this company. And you'll see Shopify. I probably won't say the name out, but a lot of reputable companies are subjected to this particular attack. So who are actually? So why is it a bigger problem now? Why haven't I heard a lot about this particular problem before? So the answer is this. So this is a research from the Tsinghua team as well. So when they look into their web hosting statistic, they find something really interesting. The number of domain name and website registration is over here. And you can see there's a sudden boost in the number of hosting services available and being purchased by people. So if they are hosting and there are much less website and domain name, what's happening to those hosting? It's being used before, maybe from marketing campaign, and then it's got released. The whole trend of going onto the CDN or the cloud contributed to this particular problem, and this is an exponential and disproportionately it's grown exponentially and disproportionately between the website and domain name and hosting. So this is the real problem. So what the Tsinghua team done is that, all right, if I see this, what's actually behind this? So they narrowed down their vision and research into host-based domain takeover issues, and this is their research. And by hosting-based domain takeover, this is the definition. Basically, a type of domain hijacking attacks by exploiting the authentication vulnerability of public hosting services. Now, this is basically a very technical way to describe dangling domain takeover. Now, so the next question that we have to ask and investigate is, so how many hosts, CDN, cloud, website builders, etc., are actually vulnerable to this kind of dangling domains attack? All right. So now this is the methodology. I promised to showcase this, and I said that there's no way for me to explain the methodology. So, in some other chances, I will invite them to share the methodology to you again, but I'll quickly jump over. Basically, they're using some passive DNS data to conduct the research to find whether there's a problem. I won't go through this particular style of their methodology. Now, the findings, though, is what is important. The finding is that the current practice of hosting service is a mess, basically. And they identified that there are 65 services vulnerable to domain takeover, including a lot of the well-known brands that you might be using at the moment. And you can see the distribution of vendor endpoint patterns and number of services under these different categories that are vulnerable to this particular attack type. I would say some really interesting stats: cloud storage, over 700% basically are vulnerable. CDN is less, but you can see that actually the CDN there is not vulnerable, a smaller scale CDN as well, for some reason. And they also did a research on the methods where a domain name are pointing to a cloud service. And they identified 9 different methods where a domain name can point to a cloud hosting service. And 7 out of the 9 of the method that you connect the hosting and the DNS is actually vulnerable to this particular attack type as well. So there are 4 different threat models to bypass what they call a DOV, a domain ownership verification. So what that is basically this. So when I buy a hosting service from whatever provider, I can basically say this hosting service should be pointing to whatever domain name, right? So what prevents them from pointing to a domain name that is not owned by them? There must be some kind of domain verification done in order to verify on the other end, I actually have control over that domain name. So that's what they refers to domain ownership verification. So there are 4 different threat models that they can bypass different types of domain name verification, and I asked them to detail that to me, which I find quite interesting because in my definition, there's basically no verification. So let me give you an example. V1, bypassing CNAME validation. So basically what that means is that if I have a buy a hosting service, some provider would say that you have to add a CNAME record in your domain name, and we'll do a CNAME verification to see if you actually own the domain name. Now, but if you just put the whatever fixed CNAME over there, it will basically just pass the service. You don't actually have to input the random CNAME domain the record that they provide to you. So basically, they give you some kind of verification, but that verification is kind of doesn't work. You can bypass it really easily by just putting whatever. Now, the V2 are basically the same, but using text record. REFI is basically using IP validation. What that actually means is that if I buy a hosting service, I would have some kind of IP range that identify the cloud hosting environment that I'm under. So they would check whether on the DNS level, whether they are pointing to, on the domain name level, they would, on the A record, for example, they would be pointing to a particular set of IP address. And in a cloud hosting environment, they would have different segments of IP address. They would check whether the A record is pointing to the corresponding IP range used within the cloud segment that you purchase. So that's really easily bypassed because you can just basically check the A record and then buy the hosting service using that particular IP range, and then you bypass the checking. Now, the same can be done on the NS side. Now, these are the 4 methods. I would say none of them are really real verification in that sense. And this is a very important slide, I would say. So top 20 vendor that have 70% of market share are all vulnerable to subdomain hijacking or dangling DNS hijacking. And you can see from their research who are subject to the V1, V2, V3, V4 vulnerability. All right, so that's the thing. That's the research from the Tsinghua team. And the conclusion is that host-based domain takeover threats are very important. It's really basically no control at the moment. And this is why I think in my topic, my topic is why do you have to worry about dangling DNS? Because this is the landscape. This is the research. This is something that is happening in real life every day. And there's an increasing trend, and there's no control at the moment. There's no verification. Now, so the research from the Tsinghua team is actually corresponding quite well with our own research in CSC. So we have a research done within our data set, which is mainly large corporate customer who are using our DNS. And you can see that we have scanned like 6 million records, where the Tsinghua team scanned 600 billion passive DNS. Now, but ours is basically just like real DNS record used by large corporates. So it's different set of records, but the findings are quite similar. In our finding, 21% of the corporate domain names are hijackable. 63% of the records basically show a 404 or 502 bad gateway. Basically represent that the other side, we're pointing our DNS to somewhere, and the other side doesn't work. So if I am a hacker, I can basically buy a service over there and reconnect back to the DNS record, and basically that's a dangling DNS hijacking. And 38% show some kind of internal server error, which is another set of problem because it's pointing to somewhere internal apparently, and it's not cleaned up. You don't know where it's pointing to. Bad practice. And the other highlight I want to show you is that in the Tsinghua research, they find that there are 270 new vulnerable domain names emerge every single week. So this is a problem as well. It's increasing every week, and that's something that we all have to be aware of. So what happens if the issue is not addressed? I think the video that I showed you before highlighted quite well. The domain name can be used for phishing attacks, and if they phish your customer, I can guarantee you 100% of them would be quite unaware because they're using your domain name. But there's also malware problem, data theft, credentials, stolen credential, financial losses. These are things that could happen if you don't address it. And I have to go back into this topic again. When we are in the DNS forum, we talk about domain name as your identity, your online identity. It defines who you are, and you have to be aware that you have to protect your identity. That's one of the most important things when it comes to the internet network security. Protect your identity. And dangling DNS or your domain name security or your authoritative DNS security are paramount. It's extremely important to protect your brand and your cybersecurity. So this is the thing. We have to be aware of this, and it's have a lot of impact. And it's your real domain. So don't discount this threat. Now, the next question that we have to investigate is then, how do I actually mitigate subdomain hijacking? So this is a concept that I want to quickly bring out. It doesn't really address the issue directly, but I think it's an important concept. The Singapore government actually released a new cybersecurity policy a couple of months ago. I think maybe even a year ago already. Basically, they highlight that corporation needs to do more in cleaning up what they call the internet hygiene. And by internet hygiene, they're looking at like HTTPS, DNSSEC, hijacking, including domain name and subdomain hijacking, I would say, whether you have DMARC record implemented to govern your email protocol. Now, stuff like that are what I call internet hygiene. And I think the Singaporean government is doing a really good job in terms of, proposing this concept of internet hygiene. And I don't see that being, discussed too much in Hong Kong at the moment. So the first thing is that let's talk about hygiene, like review and remove your unwanted legacy records. That's the baseline that you have to do. The next is that you have to daily monitor your DNS record, keep on top of it. Don't forget about it. Don't know what this particular record pointing to. And the third one would be to implement some kind of monitoring, because look, we are going to forget something. We have too many people changing our DNS. We have different offices around the world with different teams that may add or request an add or removal of DNS records. So it's complicated. So we have to have some kind of baseline safety net to actually monitor if a problem happens. So the monitoring, is something that, because we actually receive a lot of concern from our customer base. That's why we develop a subdomain monitoring service to help customer monitor how it works. Now, I would say that, I'm not saying that you have to buy this service or monitor this service. Absolutely, because if you have a really small zone, for example, if your company only have 10 records, all you need to do is to keep it clean. But so you don't have to worry about this if you have a small DNS record that you can self-manage, or you have an excellent internal communication between IP operation, marketing, and sales, or you have a really good control over global operation. No one is going to change anything, or your people just happens to comply with any internal protocol. I think this is the thing. Internet hygiene is a key word. Are you able to keep really good hygiene? If yes, good. If no, if there are risks in us not able to keep hygiene, then monitoring services like this, like subdomain monitoring or domain monitoring on new registration, are things that help you to build some kind of safety net to keep clean. At least you are aware a potential problem. So basically, this is my presentation. Hopefully, that gives you some food for thought in thinking about your internet hygiene, your DNS record, your subdomain hijacking threats. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alvin Kwon. Please be seated. Thank you. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to have the panel discussion on sensitive